Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So we're going to get started in a couple of minutes. I'm just going to make some brief announcements before I get started. There are several things that I want to talk about today. What I'm going to do is first provide my initial comments, and then what I'll do is open it up so that people can join the panel and share their thoughts about the various issues that I raised. Once I open it up, I just ask that people be respectful and not talk over each other, give each other a chance to express their viewpoints, be respectful and everything like that. And what I may do is just post the link in the chat room so that anybody can hop on. I may do that. One thing that I'm concerned about is like trolls hopping on here. I've had trolls come on my channel and basically take over, shut down the program. So instead of doing that, I will just probably ask you all for your email addresses, people who are interested, and I'll just email the link directly to you. So shout out to CSG, thanks for tuning in. Shout out to David Bowman, thanks for tuning in. Again, thanks to you all for tuning into this particular live stream. I look forward to comments from everybody. So I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes before I get started. There's several things that I want to talk about. But before I get into talking about those things, I want to make a couple of announcements. I am going to start a book club. I've mentioned this before. And today I'm going to start reading this book by Octavia Butler entitled Kindred. And I hope that you all can join me in reading that book. It's a book that I've been waiting to read for quite some time. I just finished another book, so now I'm going to go on to read this book. And what I plan to do is have a book club where we talk about various African-American books that deal with the plight of African Americans. And I'm going to have one, obviously in person. I want to try to organize an in-person group, and I may live stream it so that you all can participate in the discussions that we have as a group. So hopefully I'll be able to finish this book soon. I want to try to finish it before the beginning of Ramadan, because as you know, during Ramadan, people are focused on religious readings instead of, other types of readings. So I want to try to finish this during Ramadan. If not, I'll have to finish it after Ramadan. Ramadan starts the beginning of next month. So shout out to everybody for tuning in. Shout out to BB. Again, shout out to David Bowman. Shout out to CSG. Thanks for tuning in. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to share my screen. But right before I do so, I want to remind people that are in the Baltimore, Maryland area that I will be having an art show that's going to be on June 8th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. It will be at Montego Bar and Grill, located at 1818 North Charles Street in Baltimore, Maryland. So I hope that you all can join me there. I will feature my African-American history art, various African-American figures in Africa, in our history. They will be posted. Also, I have a new series that I've started dealing with hip hop. I'll have various acrylic paintings there as well. All of the artwork will be for sale and for display. The prices will be reduced for those people who actually attend the event. So without further ado, let me share my screen. First, I'm going to start off with this article by Talib Kweli that's critical of this ADOS movement. And as you all know, I've been highly critical of this movement. And many of the things that he says in this particular article are points that I've already raised, but I think that this is important, given this brother's profile, given his reputation. I think that it's worthwhile talking about. And I noticed that a couple of other YouTubers have discussed this, but they have more so defended this ADOS movement. And as you all know, I oppose this movement for various reasons. So let me start by sharing my screen. So here you have this article by the brother Talib Kweli. And for people who aren't familiar with the brother, he's a famous rap artist. He's a part of the legendary group Black Star, featuring Mos Def. They have produced classic songs. The brother is one of these conscious rappers, the brother was conscious before, you know, a lot of other rappers are conscious. You know, he was one of the first people to be dropping knowledge and stuff like that. You know, he's of the later generation, actually, like in the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s. The brother came out with some really conscious rap, and he continues to do the knowledge. You know, he's one of the few artists out today that's really about the knowledge. And, you know, as people know, he's been on Twitter and he's been trolled by these ADOS people, and they've been, you know, attacking him on Twitter. You had Yvette Carnell making disparaging remarks about some statements that he made. And that's part of what led to this conflict between him and these ADOS people on Twitter. And we've had some exchanges where I've supported him in this fight against these people online, these ADOS people. So let's go through the article real quick, and I'll go to your comments after I finish going through some of the points that he raises in this article. You know, so he starts off talking about Mark Thompson, you know, and Mark Thompson is an activist. Mark Thompson is one of these people who has spoken out against this ADOS movement. He was on Joy Reid's program where he basically talked about how it's a farce, you know, how it's like a one-sided movement that, you know, primarily goes after Democrats instead of Republicans. It's an anti-immigrant movement. You know, it's a divisive movement dividing African Americans from our other Black brothers and sisters from the Caribbean and from the continent. And the brother also pointed out in that interview on the Joy Reid show how basically these people are anti-Pan-Africanism. And, you know, for most activists that are really about the work, that's like heresy in the pro-Black community. But here online, people have limited knowledge. They're not even involved in real activism, so they don't understand that. But that's something that Mark Thompson pointed out. And, you know, basically this talks about, like in the beginning, it's talking about like how, you know, Steve Bannon was appointed to be a chief political strategist in the White House. And it talks about the issues around that. It talks about how people such as Mark Thompson spoke out boldly against this guy, Steve Bannon. You know, Steve Bannon was the architect behind Breitbart.com, which is a alt-right publication. And now, you know, Mark Thompson's job is in jeopardy. You know, Mark Thompson is a longtime activist. His job is in jeopardy because of some confrontation that he had with one of these ADOS fanatics. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this live stream. So it goes on to talk about Mark Thompson and his work, you know, all the great work that he's done around various issues, including, you know, participating in, you know, occupying Wall Street, you know, that movement, you know, publicizing that movement, his work in Sanford, Florida, to Ferguson, you know, him being arrested while protesting, you know, joining people like Dick Gregory and Maxine Waters and others, speaking out against the CIA's role in the crack trade and all that kind of stuff. So this brother has a long history of being pro-reparations, being pro-Black, fighting for his people, but yet and still this ridiculous, backwards, anti-immigrant, bigoted movement, ADOS, has been attacking this brother. And they have basically been attacking this brother because of Yvette Carnell. She basically posted, you know, a video criticizing this brother, attacking this brother for making statements about this ridiculous ADOS movement. And now, because of her statements, you have fanatics like this guy who calls himself Afrika, even though these ADOS people don't even support Africa or Pan-Africanism. This guy confronted the brother Mark Thompson. And again, as I said before, we'll talk about that a little bit later. You know, and this also talks about like his own history. Like people want to discredit Talib Kweli. You got all these ADOS drones and zombies going after this brother Mark Thompson. I mean, not only just Mark Thompson, but Talib Kweli. They are going after Talib Kweli. questioning whether or not he supports reparations, questioning whether or not he's black enough, questioning whether or not he's an immigrant. And that's one of the first things that these ADOS dummies do, is they try to say, well, you must be an immigrant or something because you oppose our movement. You know, in this article, Talib Kweli basically cites his record. You know, he talks about how he's rapped about reparations, how he supports reparations, you know, how he's actually an activist in the community, how he supports, you know, various organizations and stuff like that. But he talks about how none of this mattered to this ADOS movement. You know, they tried to criticize him as a coon, just like they did the brother Mark Thompson, a brother with a long history of fighting for our people, unlike these internet personalities who are nothing but entertainers, Black power entertainers, who don't put in any kind of real work in the community, who aren't really lobbying for any kind of real change. All these people do is collect donation dollars. That's all they really do, and entertain folks with their rhetoric. And then, you know, he also points out how this ADOS movement is telling people that they shouldn't vote for any Democrats unless they support reparations. But they don't hold the GOP to that same standard. They're not all up in, you know, Republicans' face asking them what their position is on reparations. You know, I see all these ADOS drones and zombies running up on Black politicians, running up on Black activists, you know, confronting them, telling them that they're not Black enough, they're not, you know, down enough, you know, questioning their commitment to the fight for reparations. But I don't see any of these damn people running up on Donald Trump. I don't see any of these people running up on any of these Republican senators or congressmen, but yet and still they want to run up on Black people. Yet and still they want to run up on Democrats who, when compared to Republicans, are far more progressive on issues that matter to us. That's why it's hard to take this movement seriously. But he points out this hypocrisy. He points out how they go hard on the Democrats, but don't even confront the Republicans. And this tweet right here basically talks about like what kind of led to this conflict between Yvette Carnell and all her supporters against the brother Talib Kweli. And this is what Talib Kweli said in his tweet. He said, I support the idea of reparations, but I'm more in support of a plan for reparations than I am in support of shouting reparations now into the void or holding my vote hostage and letting Trump win because the candidate who can beat him doesn't see that vision. I mean, exactly, man. It's like these people, they're not looking at political reality. In fact, I think that some of these people actually want Donald Trump to win. And when you look at, you know, some of the pro-Trump things that Yvette Carnell has said, and even some of these other ADOS supporters and, you know, zombies and stuff have said, it becomes apparent that some of them actually do want Donald Trump to win. I've had some of these ADOS people come to my comment section defending Donald Trump, supporting Donald Trump. And I think that these people actually want Donald Trump to win, and they are trying to sabotage these Democratic candidates. And anybody telling you to hold your vote hostage, like that buffoon, you know, that clown, Tariq Nasheed, that's somebody that's not really interested in Black political empowerment. That's somebody that's not about advancing the interests of Black people. That's somebody that's about, you know, helping our enemies suppress our vote, man. That's basically what they're about. And it is foolish to hold your vote hostage over one single issue when there are so many other issues that impact our lives. You know, and some of these people that people are criticizing, they actually support reparations, but it's a matter of the definition of reparations. It's a matter of the form of reparations. And I think that, frankly, we need to be pushing for HR 40. But let's get back to this tweet. So in response to Talib Kweli's tweet, you had Yvette Carnell say this. She said, this is the problem with Black celebrity, loud and wrong. I don't know why we should be concerned with what you think anyway. ADOS is life is imploding, and you obviously don't understand what the data suggests about the need and urgency of a reparations movement / program. I mean, he already said that he supports the idea of reparations. He supports a plan of reparations. You know, so this whole thing that this point that she's making is ridiculous. I mean, when she talks about the urgency and need for reparations, you're not going to have any kind of reparations with a Donald Trump in power. You're not going to have any kind of possibility for reparations with the GOP in power, who doesn't even care anything about Black issues. They don't even care. They are attacking affirmative action. And you actually expect these people to pass some kind of reparations legislation? You actually expect that? You want to talk about the need and urgency of reparations? Well, our needs and urgencies aren't just in the form of reparations. There are so many issues that impact our communities. Issues such as police brutality, issues such as high unemployment rates, issues such as, you know, employment discrimination, failing schools, lack of health care. You're going to push all those issues aside and make it possible to re-elect a Donald Trump, to make it possible for, you know, the Republicans to still have control over various institutions, including the Senate, by pushing this, you know, accept our version of reparations or else. You know, while she's going all hard against this brother, I don't see her going hard to support this HR 40. In fact, she's been attacking it. They've been attacking it as not being enough. And you got all these ignorant ADOS people just parroting the nonsense that she puts out here. And then, like, after this response, I mean, you got these YouTube imitators on here repeating everything Yvette Carnell says. Like, this one guy put up some video, you know, attacking the brother Talib Kweli, just parroting what Yvette Carnell says. I mean, it's like these channels have allowed themselves to be mindless parrots of Yvette Carnell. And it is pointless to watch such channels. I mean, why watch the imitation when you can just go to Yvette Carnell or Tone Talks or whatever to hear from the horse's mouth, instead of listening to these little ventriloquist dummies on here, you know, just repeating the same old stuff. But yeah, so he's pointing out like how he supports reparations, but yet you got all these people attacking him personally because of his position about the election and stuff. And then also the thing is, she jumped to conclusions by saying, you know, basically going after him, you know, basically assuming that he's necessarily talking about the ADOS movement. And then here he points out that basically it's a situation of hit dogs hollering. You know, he's basically throwing stones at these people that are willing to just make it possible for Donald Trump to be elected. Make it possible for these right-wing Republicans that don't give a damn about Black issues to remain in power. He's just calling that stuff out. And that's the reason why Yvette Carnell is hollering, because she's one of those hit dogs, because her movement basically promotes that nonsense. And as I said before, they low-key support Donald Trump. So they were trying to basically claim that this brother was a Haitian immigrant. You know, that's what he talks about in here, because he's critical of this ADOS movement. And I can understand what the brother's saying, because every time that I do one of these videos critical of this ADOS movement, I have one of these zombies, one of these mindless drones, one of these bots come into my comment section asking if I'm an immigrant. So before anybody comes here again for the 100th time, I'm not an immigrant. I'm an African American and a descendant of enslaved Africans in America. So yeah, this brother had to defend against that. And he basically talked about how his parents are African American. You know, he is, you know, he's not an immigrant. He's not a child of immigrants. But yet and still these people question his status as an African American. And they have called this brother a coon, a sellout. They said things like, go back to Haiti, even though this is a brother fighting for Black people. This is a brother who has spoken out against all these issues affecting our community. But yet and still you have these ADOS idiots attacking this brother, questioning his blackness. And that just tells you just how messed up and how divisive that movement is. Now, you all know that I've done videos critical of Umar Johnson, but the brother speaks on Pan-African issues. The brother speaks on it from a nationalist perspective, and these ADOS people are even going after him. You got that fool Tariq Nasheed questioning Umar Johnson's capability of speaking on Black issues because somebody, one of his distant relatives, you know, somebody down his bloodline was a Haitian, a Cuban immigrant. So because of that, you got people like Tariq Nasheed and others questioning whether or not he's Black enough. And then you have these people that actually come here to my video, you know, the video I did on Nipsey, basically saying, well, you can't say that Nipsey, you can't raise that point about Nipsey because his mother is a ADOS, so he's ADOS. But these same people go after Umar Johnson. These same people go after a Roland Martin, questioning whether or not he's Black enough because one of his grandparents or something like that is a Haitian immigrant. Doing the same thing with respect to Angela Rye. I mean, this is how ridiculous and how divisive and how ignorant this movement is. And then, like, he talks about how when he pointed out that Yvette Carnell did this video about Pan-Africanism being dead, you had these ADOS idiots tell him to go back to Africa. And he goes on to talk about how one of them threatened to shoot him. And one of these ADOS people actually threatened to show up where he performs and physically assault him. This is the kind of movement that we're criticizing here. This is the nature of this movement, the true nature of this movement. I've done videos about this, and my videos have been trolled by these people, by these parasites. They have no clue what real activism is like or what it's about. These people that pretend to be so pro-Black while they are actually anti-Black, anti-Africa, anti-Pan-Africanism. You have that idiot, that woman, Yvette Carnell, making mockery of African culture. You know, talking about she don't need to go back to Wakanda. Talking about she don't need to have no spears and need to ride no rhinos and stuff like that. Very bigoted and narrow-minded these people are. I mean, they are very narrow-minded. So let's go into this a little bit more. So just bear with me 1 second. And basically, he talks about how the strategy of this ADOS movement is to go after famous Black people for the most part, for not being Black enough, and for being anti-Donald Trump. For instance, they criticized Jordan Peele for hiring Africans to be in his films. I mean, this is how childish they are. They've been tweeting about, you know, people like Ta-Nehisi Coates, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders, you know, Roland Martin, Angela Rye, as I mentioned before, going after these people, attacking these people. All of those people, you know, anybody can be criticized, but these attacks that they make are just low frequency type of attacks, you know, and many of them are baseless, you know, going after Roland Martin because of one of his grandparents being a Haitian immigrant. You know, going after Kamala Harris primarily because of her immigration status and stuff like that, because she's a child of immigrants. It's just so ridiculous, man. I mean, and the fact that some of them would say things critical of Ta-Nehisi Coates, when he is one of the people that put this issue of reparations to the forefront well before ADOS movement even existed, before you had that ridiculous hashtag ADOS. And it's just like in this generation, it's like hashtags have replaced real activism, man. Sound bites have replaced substantive analysis and critical thinking. You know, actually reading books has been replaced by people getting on YouTube and watching some videos instead of going to source material on their own and reading books on their own and you know, analyzing things on their own. And this goes on to talk about how all they're doing is giving the GOP a free pass. They go hard against Democrats, go hard against progressives, while they give a pass to the GOP. Like I remember when Yvette Carnell did this video where she was going hard after Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, you know, one of the most progressive members of Congress. This woman is going hard after her, bashing her. You know, this woman, Yvette Carnell, is trashed Barack Obama, trashed all these progressive people, trashed people that are actually trying to get HR 40 passed. Trash these people. But yet I don't see any video where she's going in on a Donald Trump the way she goes in on Obama or on any of these other progressives. And that just tells you that this movement is a right-wing movement. You know, the fact that they give the Republicans a pass, they don't go hard on them. And as he says here, this is a recipe for failure. You know, all it's going to do is result in these people, these right-wing people being reelected and being empowered. And if you think those right-wing fanatics are going to pass some reparations legislation, you are delusional. You are out of your mind. And I will get to your comments in the chat room in a second. And on Twitter, you know, I posted this photograph of Yvette Carnell. I took a screenshot before she took down that video. Before she took down that video where she's all hyped up and animated, praising Donald Trump, you know, getting all moist for Donald Trump, hyped up to the point where she actually puts on this Make America Great Again hat. This picture right here speaks volumes. It says more than 1,000 YouTube videos could ever say. It says a lot. While she's going in on these Democrats, here she is rocking a Make America Great Again hat. While she goes in on Democrats, she heaps praise upon Donald Trump. She was so hyped up. If she stood by this particular video that she did, if she stands by the content, if she's proud of the content, why did she take it down? Why did she take it down? And then Talib Kweli talks about how he began to peel back the layers of this ADOS movement. And he understood why they were focused on attacking immigrants. And that's one of the key things. That was the big red flag for me. That was the big red flag for me when I saw them primarily going after immigrants. And, you know, he talks about how this Twitter user by the name of Yemeni basically exposed the fact that, you know, that Yvette Carnell was pushing anti-immigration propaganda and pro-Trump propaganda. Like, for instance, Yvette Carnell has this video called "Why is Everybody So Afraid of Steve Bannon?" And we know why, you know, it's been controversial having Steve Bannon in the White House. He's no longer there, but he was a chief political strategist for the White House. And I pointed out how he was affiliated with that alt-right publication, Breitbart, you know, a racist publication. You know, he has ties to white supremacists. That's why everybody is afraid of Steve Bannon. That's why people were outraged that he was actually holding that particular position. But here you have Yvette Carnell doing some video talking about why is everybody so afraid of Steve Bannon. And she also did a video, as Talib Kweli points out here, called Trump is Right About Black Poverty. And then the video, as I pointed out before, where she's wearing this hat, she actually took this down, where she was all hyped up and, you know, celebrating Donald Trump. And she took it down after we called her out for it. So, like, I was on Twitter, you know, we were having this exchange with all these ADOS people and stuff like that. And I actually posted the link to this video, and I did the screenshot, and it was retweeted and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people retweeted it, and, you know, Talib Kweli had the information. He retweeted it and stuff. So it was out here. And because of all that publicity around this issue, and because this image right here was circulating, this woman took down the video because it exposes what she's really about, man. And then she actually was like co-signing this rhetoric of blood and soil. You all remember during that Charlottesville demonstration or Charlottesville hate rally, Charlottesville riot, race riot that took place. You had those alt-right people. You had those white supremacists chanting blood and soil. Blood and soil. And yet she uses those slogans like in these tweets. Like, for instance, here she says, and what does blood and soil mean? It certainly means to me that ADOS have fought in every American war since the country's inception. And yes, I want the fruit of that citizenship. Absolutely. Got a problem with that. So she's defending her use of those terms. The use of right-wing racist terminology. So yeah, so I mean, this is very telling, you know, that she would echo, you know, a lot of the sentiment, like echo the terminology of a far-right movement. And then, as you all know, I did a video where I was explaining her connection to a white supremacist. You know, I talked about how she sits on the board of progressives for immigration reform. And this talks about how that group was designated as a hate group by the ADL, you know, the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center, and that is funded by John Tanton, a white supremacist, a white racist, you know, one of these white nationalists. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that information, when I get a chance, I'll post a link in the cards where I did a video detailing all of this stuff, detailing the ties of her organization to this white supremacist, John Tanton. You know, somebody designated as a white supremacist by the Southern Poverty Law Center and plenty of others. So for those of you who haven't seen that, check that out. It is not a coincidence that this movement is anti-immigrant. You know, in light of the fact that this woman sits on the board of progressives for immigration reform. And then she tried to defend this stuff by saying, firstly, progressives, and she has progressives in all caps, for immigration reform is not a right-wing group. I'm one of three blacks on the board. And there were 4 until a recent resignation. She talked about how there are white environmentalists on that board as well. It's a diverse group. If you watch my video, I talk about how this guy, John Tanton, tried to find inroads in the environmentalist community to go against immigration. I talk about that. I talk about how he used people and stuff like that to try to advance this anti-immigration issue. And he's using these Negro stooges and dummies like Yvette Carnell as well to go against immigration reform. to go against, you know, immigration and immigrants. So for those of you who haven't seen it, you know, I encourage you all to check that out. And he talks about how on this ADOS website, that he prays upon Ronald Reagan. I'm going to try to see if I can go to the website right now. But yeah, this is the website. And what I plan to do is I plan to compare their ideology to the ideology of these right-wing anti-immigration groups that Yvette Carnell is affiliated with. But I'll do that at another time. So for the interest of time, I won't go into all of that right now. But, you know, here he talks about how on this particular website, Ronald Reagan is celebrated for being helpful to the Black community. And Donald Trump is celebrated for being helpful to the Black community. And Barack Obama, again, is criticized for not being helpful to the Black community. And he talks about how he doesn't have any problem with people being critical of Obama. And I don't either. I've criticized various policies of Obama, like in particular, foreign policy. You know, for instance, drone attacks and, you know, supporting the coup in Libya and stuff like that. And, you know, the pro-Israeli stuff. You know, I've stated my opposition to various policies that Obama has been responsible for, but I've also acknowledged the good things that he has done that have been beneficial to our Black community. But these people, again, are one-sided in their opposition. They don't have that same kind of critique of a Donald Trump. And the fact that their critique, as he points out here, of Obama is buttressed by that celebration of Reagan and Trump, that's problematic. And clearly that's right-wing propaganda, as he points out. He talks about how reparation isn't mentioned until the very last paragraph of their agenda. And then he talks about this. He says, when I pair these facts with the fact that Antonio Moore once said that due to his genetic makeup that he is culturally closer to white American than an African. And this is similar to what Yvette Carnell was saying in her video called Pan-Africanism is Dead. She talked about the need to acknowledge that white ancestor, you know, the fact that we are descendants from white people and African slaves, or what she calls is, American slaves, and all that kind of stuff. And, basically she was going on and on about how we have more in common with a white American than we do with our African brothers and sisters. And these are the people that you all consider to be so pro-Black. This is what you define as pro-Blackness. This is the new pro-Black, where you identify more with the damn oppressor than you identify with your own African brothers and sisters, where you identify with the red, black, the red, white, and blue more than you identify with the red, black, and green. This is your new definition of pro-Black. And then he raises the question this. He says, if Antonio Moore is more like a European/American than he is African, why is he even entitled to reparations? Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so it talked about how, like, when Mark, his article talks about how when Mark Thompson called out the ADOS movement for basically having to take down the Democrats at all cost type of strategy, that made him public enemy #1 as far as these ADOS idiots are concerned. So you got all these videos on YouTube of people attacking this brother, even though this brother has been putting in the work for our people for years, for decades. Unlike these YouTube personalities who only hop on here to entertain folks, who haven't participated in a single march or demonstration, who don't even vote, who only entertain people, man. These people had the audacity to criticize this brother. So he's received threats of violence and all that kind of stuff. You know, and Talib Kweli just talked about like encounters that he had to deal with in this article. So you had this situation where somebody got all up in Mark Thompson's face and confronted him. And what I'm going to do is let me see if I can show you all the video footage of this. Let me stop sharing my screen for a second while I look this up. Oh yeah, I have it right here. Let me share my screen again. Just bear with me a second. And I will get to your comments in a second. Just bear with me. I'm going to pause between these different stories that I'm going to talk about. So shout out to Haven Bullets. He posted this video of this confrontation between Mark Thompson and this guy who calls himself Afrika, even though ADOS doesn't give a damn about Africa or Africans. So let me play this real quick for you all. And shout out to Haven Bullets. You know, he's been one of the few people that have been like really focusing on this fraudulent, you know, joke of a movement called ADOS. So let's play the footage right here. Okay, so I just had to show you that little clip, and I'm going to get back to this this article from Talib Kweli. But here you had this guy all in his face, like confronting him, you know, and now because of this incident, this brother faces the possibility of losing his job at Sirius XM. And that brings me to this quick point before I go back to this article. I want to go to my Twitter page. If you're not following me on Twitter, I encourage you all to follow me at New Pas Blog on Twitter. And here, you know, the sister is encouraging people to contact Sirius FM to voice their support for Mark Thompson because of this, you know, this attacks, you know, these people attacking him, and because of this confrontation, Sirius XM is considering firing this brother. So here's the number here, and I encourage everyone to call this number. I will be calling this number myself as well. The number is 866-6355027. Again, 866-6355027. So I encourage you all to call that number, as the sister in Kichi has pointed out, call this number and encourage them not to fire this brother. Support this brother. This is a brother who's been on the front lines in our fight for freedom, justice, and equality in this country. I encourage y'all to support this brother and stand with this brother. It's a shame that because of one of these ADOS zombies, this brother faces losing his job, losing a platform where he's been able to push various issues that are of utmost importance to our community. So again, I encourage y'all to call that number to support that brother. You know, tell them not to fire this brother. This brother is a soldier in our community for freedom, justice, and equality, and he deserves our support. You know, it's a shame that you had this person run up on him, you know, getting all in his face, calling him a coon and stuff like that, when this brother puts in the work for the people. When this brother is fighting, you know, been fighting for years for us. But yet you got this fool getting all up in his face. And I'm glad that Mark Thompson hit that fool in the face, man. He deserved it. Getting all up in his face, getting all in his personal space. You know, basically putting him in a position of having to defend himself. So let's get back to this article, man. So again, I encourage y'all to support this brother, Mark Thompson. Call Sirius XM and voice your support for the brother. But it's just crazy that this situation would happen. And then after this whole attack, this guy is, you know, has had this to say. Look, after this situation happened, this is what he had to say.
My name is Afrika, and we don't like Uncle Tom's like you. We're tired of fellas like you on MSNBC. Look at you dead. Why are you so aggressive like that? Because we know you a sellout. You mad, we know you a coon. We know you a coon. Go on MSNBC and lie. Go on MSNBC and lie. You're a sellout. You hit me with that camera, I'm suing you some more. You already hit me in my eye. I already got you. You already hit me in my eye. Yo, stop right now. Yo, we gotta confront this Uncle Tom. Wait. When you get on MSNBC and be lying, we ain't with none of that stuff. Yo, we real black people out here. We catching hell like, what you gonna tell him? What you gonna tell him? Shut your Uncle Tom ass up. You sell out house nigga. You out here, we think we scared of you? I'm not scared of that camera. What you gonna do with that camera? My name is Afrika the Great Bitch. My name is Afrika the Great Bitch. You're a sellout coon. Yo, you put that phone on my face, you hit me with it, I'm gonna knock you out. Yo, I'm good. I am good. Yo, this Uncle Tom needs to be confronted. This Uncle Tom sellout. He's trying to be aggressive.
All right, I heard enough of that fool. Yeah, I mean, these are the people that follow ADOS, man. They got the nerve to be questioning somebody's blackness or somebody's commitment to black people when they follow behind a woman who is affiliated with white supremacist groups. When they follow behind a movement that supports a damn white supremacist Donald Trump on the low. They support him on the low. They want to pretend like they're not down with Donald Trump. But these people on the low want to help him get reelected. So yeah, this is the movement, man. You know, and he talks about how, you know, this movement, they try to say, well, if you're not down with ADOS, you're against African Americans. And that's nonsense, man. And, you know, he goes on to say this. He talked, you know, Talib Kweli says this. They will try to tell you that they have pushed the issue of reparations to the forefront and nobody before them has. And he points out how this is just a blatant lie. You know, it's disrespect to our ancestors and our leaders. You know, he talks about how people like Jackson, Sheila Jackson, along with Ron Daniels and John Conyers, introduced H.R. 40 back in, you know, back in 1989, and they've been pushing it every year since. You know, he talks about how organizations such as the National African American Reparations Committee and NCOBRA, which stands for the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, have been doing this work for years. You know, he talks about how people like Randall Robinson have been writing about this for years. Randall Robinson wrote the book, The Debt. And you have other people that have been pushing this issue for years. You had his brother, just bear with me 1 second. You had his brother, a professor by the name of Dr. Raymond A. Winbush, who's been pushing this reparations issue for years, who put together a book entitled Should America Pay? Slavery and the Raging Debate on Reparations. So these ADOS people did not start this push for reparations. They are not the only people who have brought this issue to the forefront, but they present it as if they are. And Randall Robinson, while he was pushing for reparations, he also was is a Pan-Africanist. You know, he was the founder of the organization Trans-Africa, which not only pushed for, you know, the interests of African people worldwide, it also, you know, the organization also pushed for reparations. And he points out how you had all these other scholars like a Dr. Claude Anderson and others who have advocated for a long time for reparations. And as he points out here, you can support reparations without supporting that anti-immigrant, right-wing ADOS movement. You know, and this whole thing, he talks about how basically this ADOS movement is going to help usher in a victory for Donald Trump. That's what they're going to do. Yeah, so that's his article on that ADOS movement. I will put a link to this article in the description box for those of you who haven't read this article. It's on Medium. The title of the article is here. It's Why ADOS is Trash, and it says receipts attached. So before I move on to the next subject, I'm going to see what you all are saying in the chat room. Let me stop sharing my screen now. Shout out to everybody in the chat room. Thanks for tuning in. And it's like the people that they are defining as coons just tells you how lost this ADOS movement is, how ridiculous it is. Here you have one of the most conscious rappers in the industry, and they're calling that brother a coon. Here you have a brother like a Mark Thompson who's been putting in the work for decades, and you call that brother a coon. A brother who was there in Newark, from what I understand, to speak at an event sponsored by the mayor, or that the mayor was participating in, the mayor, the brother, Ras Baraka. You know, a good brother, a revolutionary brother. But yet they're going to call this brother, Mark Thompson, a coon. Man, these people have lost their damn mind, man. That tells you how bankrupt this movement is. It tells you how ridiculous this movement is. It tells you how this movement has no legitimacy at all. You got these online people on here pushing this reparation. I mean, reparations is fine. I support reparations, but this ADOS movement is nonsense. You know, they went from the red, black, and green to the red, white, and blue and all that kind of stuff. I could go on and on about that, but it's just like the movement is a disappointment. Let me go to, just bear with me a second, y'all. Oh, this only allows me to go back so far with the chat in the chat. So I'm not able to go all the way back to all the comments that were made. So I apologize for that. All right, so let's see. So somebody said keep voting and get nothing in return. I mean, that comment is just so ridiculous. So what are you going to get in return for not voting? What do you get by not voting, by sitting at home? You get absolutely nothing from doing that. And politicians don't even waste their time with people that don't vote. That's what these people don't understand. Like when politicians are deciding what communities to canvass in, what communities to meet with, they do not waste their time with communities that don't vote. They don't waste their time with them. So when they don't spend time with you, guess what? Your issues become irrelevant. And despite all this stuff that these people are saying, many of these politicians are bringing issues that are of importance to the Black community to the forefront. They are supporting issues that are important to us. But these people wouldn't know it because they're so uninformed. They don't even take time to read a newspaper. They don't take time to even read these politicians' websites so they can understand what their points are or their positions are. All they do is go listen to what their gods tell them to believe. You know, they're gods like a Yvette Carnell or Antonio Moore. That's all these people do. They don't do any critical thinking. They don't do any of their own research. And then they put up these statements like this: keep voting and get nothing in return. That's nonsense. You know, I've done countless videos talking about the things that Obama has done, for instance. So, I mean, I could go on and on about that. Yeah, so I'm sorry that these comments don't go far back. I don't know why it doesn't allow it to go to the beginning, but I'll just work with what we have. So Frankie Robinson said, well, WTM said that typical ADOS, always ready to brawl. Yeah, I mean, they're ready to brawl one way or the other, either online or, you know, like this. Like you got these ADOS people running up in people's face talking about cut the check, cut the check, knowing damn well nobody's going to cut any kind of check for you anytime soon. And if they did cut a check for many of you, that money would end up back in the white man's hand in a couple of days or a couple of hours. That's just how idiotic this movement is, man. They actually think and then they actually argue with other Black people, you know, Black immigrants, you know, from the Caribbean and from Africa. They actually argue with them as if this white man is cutting some checks tomorrow or something, and they're fighting over the funds. That's just how idiotic the movement is. You can't even get this man to agree to a study, and you actually think that this man is going to agree to cut some checks tomorrow. Just bear with me a second. I'm going through the comments. And then somebody said, well, the anti-immigrant rhetoric is related to non-ADOS people trying to get in the way of our claim. Nobody is trying to get in the way of your claim for reparations. I mean, these people just be making up stuff, man. Nobody's saying, well, I want your reparations. I haven't heard one African immigrant saying, well, I want your reparations. I haven't heard one immigrant from the Caribbean saying, I want your reparations. This movement, at the end of the day, isn't even about reparations. It's about promoting an anti-immigrant agenda. That's what it's about at the end of the day. They don't have any concern about anybody else's issues. You know, they're not willing to align or form real coalitions with others based on mutual interest, and they actually expect reparations to pass. They are dividing themselves from other Black people. They're dividing themselves from other, you know, so-called minority groups. They're even dividing themselves from progressive white politicians. And these people actually expect to get something passed when you're only 13% of the population. These people aren't for real, man. The idea of not voting being some kind of political empowerment tool is pure nonsense and fantasy talk. All you're doing is turning over the reins of government to your enemies. You're saying, here, Mr. Charlie, here, Mr. White Supremacist, Mr. Racist, I'm going to let you run the whole show. I'm going to sit back and watch. That's what that amounts to. That's what your Tariq Nasheed don't vote silly ass campaign amounts to. It's like you don't even need voter suppression. You don't even need the white man to pass laws to suppress black voters when you have fools like Tariq Nasheed telling you not to vote. When you got these so-called woke people telling you that your vote doesn't matter. They are doing the work of the white supremacists. You don't even need literacy tests nowadays. You don't even need poll taxes nowadays, as long as you have these fake pro-black people telling you not to vote and you going along with it by the thousands. Yeah, so I'm going through these comments. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, I don't know why YouTube doesn't allow you to see all the comments. All right, I don't know let's see. Yeah, I can only see back so far. So I won't comment on comments that I can't see. Let's see. I'm not aware of people thinking that Pan-Africanism is a one-way street. Psycho. Like, I'm not aware of like Africans thinking it's just a one-way situation. I mean, anybody that studies the Pan-African movement knows that that's never been like, they know that that has never been, you know, the situation, you know, like it goes both ways. Like you have the Pan-Africanists from Africa supporting the struggle of Africans in America. And you also have Africans in America and throughout the diaspora supporting the struggles of our African brothers and sisters. And, you know, I won't go into all the examples. I've done this before. All people have to do is see my video on Pan-Africanism, responding to Yvette Carnell's ridiculous video. So this guy, Congolese German, says, no, Mark Thompson wasn't harassed. Anytime somebody gets in your face and calls you a coon and a sellout, that's harassment. All in your face, actually putting their finger in your personal space. This guy had his finger on Mark Thompson's chest, pointing at him, calling him a coon and stuff like that. That's not no intellectual debate. That's harassment. And if somebody does that to me, I'm going to knock them straight the hell out, you know, for real. And, you know, I think that brother was justified to hit that fool in the face. So somebody said that I never go after Jason Black. I don't watch Jason Black. So I'm not familiar with his content. Like, it's been years since I've watched Jason Black. I unsubscribed from that guy years ago. So I don't follow his content. So it would be difficult for me to criticize somebody that I don't follow. I mean, if the criticism that I'm raising right now towards this ADOS movement applies to these other people, then so be it. Like, I don't watch Jason Black. I don't watch the Professor Black Truth or whatever his name is. I don't watch those people, so I can't. It's hard for me to criticize those people. And why watch the parrots when I could go straight to the source? The source is Yvette Carnell. The source is Antonio Moore. They are the founders of this ADOS movement. They're the founders of that stuff. So why go after the people that are just parroting their rhetoric when I can go after the people, the source itself? So that's what that's about. Oh, so Frankie Robinson wanted the number. Let me give you the number. I'm going to put it in here. The number for, let's see if I can pull it up. Yeah, I'm going to copy it from this tweet and post it in the chat room. The number is 866-635-5027. So I'm posting it right now in the chat. Yeah, it's like, how are you gonna call yourself Africa when your ADOS movement opposes Pan-Africanism and has no respect for Africa? Has, you know, talks about how we have no ties to Africa, but yet you running around here calling yourself Africa, supporting a movement that you don't even really fully understand, obviously. Yeah, what's intellectual about running up in somebody's face, calling them a coon? How is that intellectual? Running up in somebody's face, talking about what needs to be discussed on MSNBC when a brother has discussed all those issues before on MSNBC. So somebody said that Mark Thompson could have handled the situation way better. Mark Thompson tried to walk away from this guy. He tried to say peace out, you know, give him some dap and just keep it moving. He tried, but this guy got all up in his face, and I don't blame him for dealing with that guy, man. The guy's putting his finger in his chest and stuff like that, calling him a coon and all this and that. And if he walked away, they would have been really running with that stuff, saying he's a punk and all this and that, just like they did the brother, one of these congressmen. They ran up on this black congressman, Clyburn, that's his name, Representative Clyburn. And they were like saying, cut the check and blah, blah, blah about reparations. Then they called him out for walking away from him. That's how these parasites do, man. That's how these trolling ass ADOS idiots do. That's how they function. So the brother did what he had to do under the circumstances. No, the guy is, I mean, it's like these people always try to disclaim the ADOS movement. That guy is ADOS. He is a supporter of the ADOS movement. That's why he was confronting Mark Thompson. So quit trying to disown him. Like these people who try to disown Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore as well, even though they're the founders of the movement. That just shows you like how chaotic that so-called movement is, how much it lacks structure or any kind of solid foundation. Exactly, WTM. Yeah, I mean, there was nothing intellectual about that confrontation at all. He was all up in his face. Exactly. So this guy, Midtown Pookie, and that name is so appropriate for you. I mean, you acting like one of these uneducated Pookie Ray Ray type characters, man. Talking about we don't care if he's reelected when we've never had a president that was not racist. That just tells you just how ignorant you are, man. that statement right there just tells you how ignorant you are. It tells me how ignorant a lot of these people are in that ADOS movement. The fact that you would make a statement like that just tells me how clueless you are when it comes to the political process. Donald Trump is appointing justices to the Supreme Court that will impact our civil rights, our civil liberties. Not only just the Supreme Court, but on the lower federal courts. That will have a huge impact on us. He's attacking things that matter to us: affirmative action, voting rights. And also, you know, this man has made it clear that he doesn't view police brutality as a priority, as something that needs to be addressed. But you don't care if he gets reelected? You don't care at all. These same people that want to cry about what Obama didn't do for Black people are the same people that are cooning it up basically for Donald Trump. Donald Trump made it clear to you that he doesn't give a damn about police brutality. He actually joked about police brutality. This man actually supported racial profiling against Black people, supported stop and frisk and stuff like that. And you don't care if he gets elected, reelected? What the hell is wrong with you? This man is talking about getting rid of Section 8, getting rid of food assistance for poor people, and you don't care if he gets reelected? What the hell is wrong with you? Yeah, Elena B is correct. I mean, they're supporting a movement that's only going to ensure that the Republicans remain in power. And that's a guarantee that you will not have reparations. Exactly. Just bear with me a second. There's a couple of other stories that I want to discuss before I open it up for people that want to join the panel, if you all want to join. This person said, why do you think that Democrats are less racist than Republicans? I mean, it's not a question about somebody having an attitude, like, you know, somebody quote unquote being less racist. I mean, in terms of answering the question, though, all you have to do is look at the policies, man. You have one party that supports affirmative action and another party that doesn't. You have one party that's defending voting rights, and you have another party that's trying to suppress voters. You have one politician, for instance, a Barack Obama, who used the Justice Department to fight against police brutality by entering consent decrees with various police departments. And you have another administration under Donald Trump that isn't even about trying to deal with police brutality, that views police brutality as some local issue. If those couple of examples don't make it clear to you, nothing will. Nothing will. Yeah, I'm back on here. Somebody said you're back on here with more of your anti-ADOS rhetoric. Yeah, I am back on here, and if you don't like it, you can bounce. Yeah, I'm back on here because I am going to criticize this movement because it's garbage, as Talib Kweli pointed out. It's trash. It's not a real movement. It's not beneficial to Black people. How is dividing up Black people beneficial to Black people? How is having immigrants going against African Americans and fighting with each other, how is that benefiting the Black community? How is that advancing the cause of reparations? I don't make apologies for going after this ridiculous movement, this sham of a movement, this joke of a movement. You know, this red, white, and blue movement that's trying to pretend to be pro-Black. That doesn't even want to identify with African heritage and African people. And that brings me to another point that the brother Talib Kweli raised. I'm going to try to see if I can pull it up in this article, because he talks about this issue of identity in here, and the issue of like an enslaved African versus this American slaves language. Because it's a point that I highlighted before in these videos that I've done on this subject. I'm trying to remember where it is in this article. It may be at the very beginning. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, there's a statement in here. I'm trying to find it where he talks about okay, yeah, this is the statement right here. Let me share my screen real quick. So he says this, he said, I've been a Black man from Brooklyn my entire life, and I never heard of that goofy hashtag until they came after me a month ago. I would never define my experience as a Black man in America. I don't come from slaves. You know, he said, I don't come from slaves. I come from an enslaved people. There's a difference. You know, so that's one point that that I just wanted to highlight, because like they overemphasize being slaves, American slaves. They don't even say African slaves, they say American slaves. So it's like they overemphasize, you know, American identity, and they define themselves by slavery. Our history existed before we were enslaved people. And our people aren't just some slaves. We were people that had a history, that had civilization, who were enslaved by their oppressor. So let me go on to your comments a little bit further, and then I'm going to go on to the next subject that I wanted to discuss, and then I may open it up to see if people want to join. Yeah, so Elena B just pointed out how nobody wants benefits that they're not entitled to. Exactly. None of these immigrants are talking about getting some benefits that they're not entitled to. And you will need, like as she points out, you will need people who are not ADOS, so-called ADOS people, to support any kind of legislation that you want passed. And how are you going to get that to happen when you're alienating all these potential allies? Okay, somebody asked a question. Hold on one second. Man, this thing jumps around too much. Hold on one second, y'all. And it's a lot of comments here. I may not have time to go through everything. All right, so let's see. Yeah, so I agree with that whole point about the need for unity, because you're not going to have reparations without unity, especially since Black people in America make up a minority, as I've said before. Now, somebody said, named Terrence Spencer, said he was talking about the lies that he told on MSNBC. What lies did he tell? All he spoke was actual facts. He didn't tell any lies. He told the truth about that sham ADOS movement. You know, that clown, that Afrika clown was all in his face, acting like this brother Mark Thompson didn't speak on all these other issues dealing with our people. And he does all the time, all day, every day. Not only does he speak about these things, he actually does things to try to improve these things. Okay, so somebody said that Professor Black Truth has attacked Dwayne Wade's gay son, but has completely ignored his ADOS leader being lesbian. Yeah, I mean, that's an example of hypocrisy, man. And for me, like her sexuality, that's her business. You know what I'm saying? Like I could care less about that. Like that's really not a big deal to me. You know, that's her personal issue. That's her personal life and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that I see is odd, like a lot of people are talking about how she's with some white woman. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's like for me, you know, it's just like, man, how are you gonna be the leader of some pro-Black movement and you laying down with white people? I mean, this is the new pro-Black nowadays, man. Man, I mean, this guy, real brother. I mean, how many troll accounts do you have, man? I thought I blocked you a couple of times, man. Jeez, let me block you again. Just like, man. All right. I'm probably gonna end up cutting this live stream into pieces because I know a lot of people, this is too much for somebody to consume at once, just based on the time length of it. Let me see. Yeah, shout out to Frankie Robertson. I don't think anybody has said that they're entitled to compensation. So I don't know why people keep raising that point. I don't think anybody that's opposed this ADOS movement has been arguing then so-called ADOS people should get reparations from white America. Yeah, so Elaine Lloyd said not voting doesn't solve anything. No one cares what you think if you keep your mouth closed. Voting isn't the same thing as a boycott. The government won't stop if Black people don't participate. Exactly. The government will not stop in its tracks. It will not stop functioning if Black people say, well, we're not voting. I mean, don't these people realize that for years we weren't allowed to vote and the government functioned without Black people participating? It functioned to our detriment, for sure, but it still functioned. And it's like these people are taking us backwards by encouraging Black people not to vote. Because when we're not involved in the policy-making process, our enemies gain control over making policy. And they make policies that are detrimental to us. Yeah, Elena B said that she loves all African people worldwide. I do too. I agree with that. Yeah, I'm on. Eventually, I may do a response to these people that are talking about this Nipsey Hussle conspiracy. You know, it's just so crazy, man. These people always got to create some boogeyman instead of taking responsibility for what happens in the hood, man. They always promote that powerless narrative, that, you know, victim narrative and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to go on to the next story because I don't want to keep y'all too long. And then I may open it up. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so the next thing I want to talk about is this tweet that Donald Trump put out here against the sister Ilhan Omar. She's a representative. She was recently elected to Congress. She's a Muslim, you know, from, I think her family is from Somalia. She's from Somalia. But I want to show you this tweet that Donald Trump put out here and just talk about why it's important and, you know, why it is very dangerous. Also, I want to talk about the response of Antonio Moore to this whole controversy, you know, talk about his response and what it reflects in terms of this ADOS movement. So if you can bear with me for a second, I will share my screen.
Founded after 9/11.
All right, so let me take it to.
CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something.
You have no idea where
I may have to close some of these windows. Just bear with me.
Another plane just hit. Some people did something.
Oh my goodness, there is smoke going out in Canada.
Some people did something.
It just flew straight into it.
So I'm going to play it again because there was some interruption.
CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something.
You have no idea where I'm right
Oh,
now.
there's another one. Another plane just hit.
Some people did something.
Oh my goodness, there is smoke pouring out of Canada.
Some people did something.
It just flew straight into it.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Just watching that video, you know, enrages me because I know what Trump is trying to do. He is fueling the flames of hatred against Muslims. That's what he's doing. And he is actually putting Representative Omar's life in jeopardy by putting that particular tweet out there, and, you know, by people viewing that tweet. Basically, he's trying to suggest that this woman was downplaying the horrible tragedy of 9/11. She was not. You know, he shows a brief little tiny portion of a speech that the woman gave, taking her statements completely out of context, completely distorting what she's saying. Basically, she was talking about how all Muslims are being demonized and discriminated against because of the actions of a few individuals that do not represent mainstream Islam. That's what she was talking about. And basically, you have this situation where this guy, Donald Trump, is putting this woman's life in jeopardy. You have people threatening her, you know, people attacking her, you know, because of statements she made about Israel, which were on point. People attacking her because she spoke out on this issue of Muslims being discriminated against, and she talked about the need for Muslims to speak out against you know, the violation of civil liberties. Because of that, Donald Trump is basically demonizing this woman and basically suggesting that she doesn't view 9/11 as a tragedy and that she downplayed 9/11. So I had to express my outrage about that video. It's just a shame that you would have something circulated like this, designed to inflame people, to enrage people, to make people more bigoted towards Muslims. You know, after 9/11, even George Bush, you know, as was pointed out in this video that I will share from the Washington Post, even he condemned Islamophobia. But you have a Donald Trump who condones Islamophobia, who had an all-out travel ban against all Muslims, you know, basically trying to ban Muslims from coming to this country. He had certain designated countries, not every single Muslim country, but the intent was clear, to prevent Muslims from coming to this country. So you have this situation where this guy is promoting more Islamophobia, more hatred towards Muslims, promoting a situation where people will possibly threaten this woman's life and attack this woman. He's basically fanning those flames. And we know that fanatics follow Donald Trump. We know it. Some of these terrorists, these people that have plotted bombings and stuff, have been inspired by Donald Trump. One of those terrorists that sent bombs to different locations was inspired by Donald Trump. You know, time and time again, we see examples of this. You know, one of these people, if I'm not mistaken, one of the person that targeted synagogue and other places, inspired by Donald Trump's rhetoric. And then they want to play innocent, like they had nothing to do with the situation when blood pours in the streets. So yeah, I had to say something about that. And I was really disappointed when I found out about that guy Antonio Moore's statement dealing with this issue, where he's basically trying to downplay it and saying, well, we shouldn't be worried about that. And, you know, why are black politicians talking about that when they should be talking about these other issues that are important to black people? So let me show you his tweet. And it's just another reminder of like what's wrong with that ADOS movement. Let me see if I can pull this up. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, I think this sister, Miss Imani, put the tweet out. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, here it is. Man, this is a long hangout. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm gonna have to cut it up, so that people can see it in segments so that they can watch everything in their own time. All right, so let me share my screen. So you see this tweet here where you have Antonio Moore complaining. So you have him retweeting Stacey Abrams' tweet where she's raising concerns about this issue dealing with Representative Ilhan Omar, where Stacey Abrams says that she says our country is made better by Representative Ilhan Omar's voice and leadership in Congress. I'm thankful for her courage and praying for her safety. And she basically says all Americans of good conscience must stand with the Muslim community. And then you have Antonio Moore saying this. And then Yvette Carnell retweets what Antonio Moore says. He says, all these people from Stacey Abrams to Representative Barbara Lee have tweeted on Ilhan, but are dead quiet about a Black agenda, reparations, or ADOS. No other group other than Black America has politicians that avoid discussing their own issues. And first, I mean, this is ridiculous, man. This is absolutely ridiculous because those politicians talk about Black issues all the time. They talk about issues that are relevant to our community. But here you have this person, Antonio Moore, basically suggesting that the situation involving Representative Ilhan Omar is a non-issue, something that Black people shouldn't be concerned about. And the reason why he has this type of stance is because their movement is anti-immigrant. And she is an immigrant. So their movement is against immigrants. And this is part of the reason why they had a stance. They basically say, well, we shouldn't be concerned about anybody's issues. We shouldn't be concerned about immigrants at all, even though many immigrants are Black. We shouldn't be concerned about immigrants. He's another one of these people that go off against, DACA and stuff like that, saying that's a non-issue. How in the hell do you expect these other people to be concerned about your issues in your situation when you're not concerned about anybody else's issues? How are you going to build any kind of coalition to get this legislation passed when you don't even build bridges with other groups of people? So the sister, Miss Imani, and I encourage y'all to follow the sister on on Twitter. She puts out great content about this ridiculous ADOS movement. She says she says ADOS founders have shown their true colors. I have no words for the utter depravity it takes to complain that so many people have stood up against the incitement of violence against Ilhan. This is no movement, and that is no leader. I stand with Ilhan. Mute ADOS. And I agree with that. Here you have a situation where the president of the United States is inciting violence against a Black woman. But yet you have these buffoons in this ADOS movement saying that that's not something that people should, basically they're saying you shouldn't be focused on that issue. You shouldn't even be concerned about that. You should just be talking about cutting some checks. This is your ADOS movement. This is what they represent, man. So let me stop sharing this. Let me stop sharing that. Let me go back to y'all real quick. And I want to thank everybody in the chat room. Shout out to Psycho. Shout out to everybody, man. All right, let me just go through your comments, and then I'll post the links for people that want to join. And I think I only have like one more hour that I could do. I'm running out of steam. Just bear with me a second. I'm looking through your comments. Covina, man, said that Africa guy is a black identity extremist. Yeah, I mean, I could see how somebody could say that. So Ryan Moss said, wait a minute. So us talking to our politicians is a problem when other people do the same? They're okay. Nobody's saying that talking to your politicians is a problem. Nobody's saying that at all. Running up in somebody's face talking about cut the check and you're a sellout, that's a problem. Because that accomplishes absolutely nothing. So somebody said Yvette Carnell's ain't black, half of her DNA is white. I can't speak on if she's half half white, and that's, you know, I won't talk about that. Man, my stomach's growling and everything. Just bear with me a second. So Ryan Moss said ADOS is showing that they won't sit back and let somebody talk falsely about us. I mean, he didn't say one thing that was false about that movement. Everything he said was right and exact. You know, these people keep saying what he said was false, but they don't show and prove how it was false. And I'm about to post a link, and I challenge these people to refute what I'm saying. Yeah, when people use profanity, YouTube automatically hides your comments. So I just want to make sure that y'all are aware of that. And most of them I will unhide. You know, I'll show them and stuff like that if I catch them. So just be aware of that when you post your comments. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and post a link. Hopefully no trolls will come on here. And I'll wait just a couple of minutes to see if anybody wants to join. So all those people that want to challenge my views on ADOS can join this particular hangout and chop it up with me live, or if you have points about anything else that I said, we can talk about that as well. I'll wait a couple of minutes. And then as I wait, I'll look through your comments to see if there's anything else you all had to say. Oh, so Psycho said, is real brother my master teacher? Of course not, man. Real brother is a troll. Like he's nuts. You know, I mean, it's like years ago I blocked and deleted this guy. I mean, it's like, why does he keep coming around under different names and different accounts and stuff? I mean, how many times do I have to block this guy? He didn't teach me anything, man. like years ago, we had some confrontation with this other YouTuber. And then later on, I found out that this guy, Real Brother, is a nut. He's crazy. So since then, you know, I've blocked this guy multiple times, blocked him on Twitter, blocked him on YouTube a couple of times, and here he is. And Ryan Moss keeps going on, like he's saying, well, American slaves built the wealth of this nation. Nobody disagrees with that. Nobody's making a point about that. And, you know, we should be entitled to reparations. But, you know, the terminology American slaves, you know, I take issue with that. We're African Americans. We were Africans enslaved in America. You know, we weren't even recognized as American citizens. But yet you got these people putting the red, white, and blue in the forefront, defining themselves by a country that disowned them, disrespected them, and didn't even consider them to be human beings, much less citizens. So I'll just keep going through your comments to see if anybody wants to join citizens. So I see that. So I'll just keep going through your comments to see if anybody wants to join. I thought I blocked you. I mean, I don't know how you managed to get on here. Let me see if I can delete this guy. Yeah, this is the problem with going live. I thought I.
What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? New possibilities? You afraid you can't?
I'm not afraid of you or anybody. I don't.
You are. If you don't want to defend your argument, then you're afraid to defend your argument. I can defend my argument. How come you can't? How come you can't defend your argument? I'm not ADOS. I'm a real brother. I don't believe that if we go off the bottom,
so, yeah, I'm gonna have to shut down.
Re-elect Donald Trump.
I'm not.
I don't believe we re-elect